Okay.
A little bit more.
Yep. I heard it was a hot day today. How's
Test 1 2. Captions test 1 2.
You have got me, I have got you, yeah. We'll live with no regrets. Moments like this make the memories. Whoa, these are the best of times. Whoa, nothing but good vibes. Right here we all come alive. And whoa, yeah, this is the life. Whoa, the lights on outside. Right here we all come alive. These are the best of times. Turn it up loud, laugh till all else. We will live.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Darling, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Walnut Creek City Council. The City Council is conducting this meeting from the City Council chamber. This meeting is being video streamed and can be viewed live or later on the city's website. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek City Council meeting, I wanted to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the public comment process. For each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for public comment on that item. Thus, if you desire to speak to an item on the agenda this evening, please hold your comments until the City Council considers that item. Additionally, we have a section on the agenda titled Public Communications, which is for public comments for items not on the agenda. Any comments during public communication should not relate to an item that is on the agenda this evening. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be initially allocated for public communication for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the open session portion of the meeting if necessary. If you desire to provide a public comment, please complete a speaker identification card and line up behind the lectern at the appropriate time. Wait your turn, and then when you approach the lectern, please state your name, city of residence for the record. You will have 2 minutes to address the City Council. Please keep in mind that this is a city business meeting. The City Council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure that meetings are conducted efficiently and effectively, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected in the council chamber and can be found on our website. All remarks should be addressed to the City Council. Please do not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meeting. Again, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. Written comments submitted and received up to 2 hours before the meeting have been posted to the city website for public review and are included in the meeting record, but will not be separately read into the record.
Good evening and welcome, everyone. My name is Councilmember Matt Francois. I'm filling in for Mayor Cindy Darling this evening. And welcome to the Tuesday, September 16th meeting of the Walnut Creek City Council. If you'll please rise if you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And City Clerk Susie Martinez, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember DeVinny.
Here.
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Here.
And Mayor Darling is absent due to a planned vacation.
Excellent. So we have a quorum and we can conduct business. We're going to start off tonight by issuing a proclamation and recognizing Hispanic Heritage Month. And as many of you know, from September 15th to October 15th is our annual celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. Hispanic and Latino people comprise a majority of racial majority in California as well as in the country. And this week we celebrate the Independence Day of several Latin American countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Today, in fact, is Mexican Independence Day, and the 18th is the Independence Day of Chile. So we're very excited to be able to recognize this important event, and we have a special guest here tonight, Francisco Rios from the Monument Crisis Center in Concord, and I'd like to present you with a proclamation from the city and allow you to make some remarks.
Hello, good evening. My name is Francisco Rios. I'm here with my wife, and I've been here in the United States for over 30 years, and this is a pleasure to be here with you guys. So I'm going to read, so be patient. Thank you to the City of Walnut Creek for acknowledging Monument Crisis Center and allowing us to accept this proclamation on behalf of the Latino community. It is thanks to the support of the communities such as the City of Walnut Creek and the many individuals, families, and organizations that support not only Monument Crisis Center, but the community as a whole. We have clients from all over the world with a rich and diverse background. During the 2024-25 fiscal year, Monument Crisis Center provided assistance with our 6 core programs and served over 14,000 individuals. And of those, more than 52% are Hispanics. Our staff also combines different cultures, and many of our staff and board members are also Hispanic. By the way, one of our clients, who is a senior, she receives food from us once a week and spreads the love by cooking soup and sandwiches to feed the homeless and the day laborers. What makes the Hispanic community important and interesting are all those things that make the Bay Area, California, and the entire country great, like food, music, traditions, work ethics, family values, and friendship with everyone without any distinctions or discriminations of creeds, nationalities, or gender. We, the Latino community, make America great every day with all the colors, sounds, and flavors that we bring to share with the vast community here in the United States. Vivan los tacos, las quesadillas, pozole, menudo, carnitas, arepas, gallo pinto, horchata, pupusas, asado, mariachi, banda. Viva toda la comunidad latina. I thank everyone here today for embracing us, the Latino community. As a member of the Monument Crisis Center and the Hispanic community, I am very proud to accept this proclamation. And thank you to the City Council. Thank you to the community for your support. Thank you for having us here today. And if you guys want to visit us at Monument Crisis Center and see how we work, you're welcome to come down and see us working. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'd like to invite your wife, who's doing some videographing, up, and we'll take a picture with the council.
Oh, great. Thank you. What do you want the picture at? Right here? Okay. Thank you again. Nice meeting you guys. Oh, yeah, we will. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Do any of my council colleagues wish to pull any item for discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Wilk? Okay. Does any member of staff need to pull an item for discussion? Not looking like it, so now I'll turn to the public. Would any member of the public like to address the council on an item that's on the consent calendar? Come on down.
Jan Warren, Woodlands, item D, having to do with the CDBG funds. And I wish I could remember what they stand for. Anyhow, I just wanted a couple clarifications. It gets a little confusing with CDBG because we have our funds, but we do certain things with the counties and our other cities. And so it talks about the 2025 pit count and shows 40% of Contra Costa County unhoused populations, and they're in shelter beds, while other 60% remain unsheltered. But then later in the report, I think it's just talking about Walnut Creek. That was the county. And on page 6, it's talking about the CR10, the racial and ethnic composition of families that's been assisted by the funds here, Walnut Creek. And so I assume that means this list of ethnicities have somehow been benefited from the funds that Walnut Creek has used. And the other piece of that same thing is it talks about on page 11, the Contra Costa County homeless population decreased by 21.9%, or from 64 to 50, and that also seems to be strictly to Walnut Creek. So I just appreciate the clarification.
You bet. Thank you, Jan, for your careful reading of the report. Staff, I think this is any immediate responses are probably something that we can look at and make sure there are any clarifications before it's submitted on to HUD. Does that sound right? Okay. Any other public comments on the consent calendar? All right, then I will entertain a motion.
Move approval of the consent calendar items A, B, C, D, and E with the corrections submitted at the dais for the CAPER report, as well as the direction to staff to check on those statistics related to the homeless and whether I think she's right that the homeless count that we had was specific to Walnut Creek and not the county as a whole.
Second.
Any further discussion or debate? So we have a motion and a second. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
All right, moving right along. Next on the agenda is public communications. For those of you who have been here before, you know that this is the portion of the meeting reserved for comment on items that are not on our agenda tonight. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but we can respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. We can also request clarification or refer the item to staff. So consistent with our city council handbook, we've set aside 30 minutes at this time for public communications for items not on the agenda. The time is 6:15, and we'll take public comments on items not on the agenda until about 6:45. And then we'll put off any remaining comments until the end of the agenda. So this time I'd invite any members of the public that would wish to address the council on an item that's not on the agenda to please step forward, and reminder that you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, City Council and City staff. I am Diane Young. I have the honor of co-chairing this wild and wonderful thing called Community Service Day, which was founded in 2011 by Cindy Silva for her mayor's project. And yes, she's still the driving force behind our continued success. 2025 marks our 15th anniversary and big changes are afoot. Community Service Day has always happened in early October. These days, schools, who are the source of many projects and volunteers, are taking fall breaks in October. Therefore, we are moving Community Service Day to the spring of 2026. To bridge this transition, we are looking to take a page for our pandemic playbook. In 2020, we created a community food drive. The generous people of Walnut Creek gave over 19 tons of food and almost $19,000 to the Contra Costa Food Bank. This year, we're doing it again on September 27th and hoping to really blow it up. There are many ways to help. More volunteers are needed to staff collection sites at 7 local grocery stores on Saturday, September the 27th. You can also give via dozens more collection points, including schools, libraries, churches, and more. 12,000 Trader Joe's grocery bags will be distributed throughout our neighborhoods next week. If you're lucky enough to receive one, you may follow the directions on the bag and a lovely volunteer will pick it up. There's also a virtual food drive. Every dollar donated buys 2 meals. These opportunities are listed on the city's website. Just enter Walnut Creek Community Service Day into your favorite search engine. All the cool ones know about us. Please mark your calendars and join us for the Walnut Creek Community Food Drive on Saturday, September 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for volunteering. Next speaker.
Good evening, council members, city staff. My name is Jim King. I am a resident of Alamo, but I've been a business owner in Walnut Creek since 1981. A member of the Walnut Creek Masters Swim Club since 1987, and the chair of fundraising for the Walnut Creek Aquatic Foundation since 2015. And it is in that capacity that I meet with you tonight, I address you tonight. I want to extend our sincere appreciation for your continued partnership and vision for the new Aquatic Center. A brief update. Our campaign, which launched earlier this year with the goal of raising $3 million toward the cost of the new Aquatic Center, and its construction and long-term sustainability, has reached its first goal. We now have pledges and cash in hand of approximately $655,000, about 22% of our goal. Some of you will recall we set the goal some years ago. We appreciate that we are making progress toward that goal. It is not something we expect to achieve by the end of this year and possibly not by the end of next year, but certainly within the time horizon set out in our memorandum of understanding, we feel very confident we'll be able to reach that goal. So far, we've had individual donations ranging from $100 to $300,000. We've had 3 naming opportunities that have been claimed. The response from the community has been overwhelmingly positive. Donors are excited to be part of something that will serve all ages, from swim lessons for children to therapeutic programs for seniors. Several families and local businesses have expressed interest in naming opportunities, as I mentioned a moment ago. Upcoming efforts include a continued outreach to major donors and grant-making institutions, hopefully for naming the center itself. Finally, I would ask your support, that you would share the campaign with your networks, that you would attend some of our upcoming events. We'll have a table at the farmers market on the 27th, along with the food raising people, and the Walnut Creek Masters support or provide an opportunity at the annual Short Course Meters meet on October 3rd through the 5th. And finally, I would like to encourage the council and staff to make a pledge or a contribution to show a leadership role. And you can do that by going to our website, wscaquatics.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. King, and thank you to the Aquatics Foundation for the partnership on this. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and members of the community. My name is Kayla Trinage, and this is my colleague, Sophia Kleeman. And we are the new district field representatives for Assemblywoman Ana Marie Avila Farias, who is honored to serve Assembly District 15. We are eager to get to know each of you and foster a strong collaborative relationship between the Assembly Member's office and your city council and board. As your point of contact, we're here to serve as an ambassador for the Assembly Member whenever she's unavailable to connect directly. We look forward to working alongside you and the community projects and coordinating future meetings with her. We're also pleased to share that our district office has officially moved to a new location downtown Concord, across Todos Santos Park. We'll be hosting a New Year's grand opening, and invitations will follow shortly.
Hi, Sophia. As she said, we're with the state legislator and that it is now recessed following the conclusion of the 2025 session, and Assemblymember Avila Farias will be spending more time in the district and is eager to connect directly with constituents and with you all. We're excited to invite the community to several upcoming events. First, the Tadara de Otoño, which is our Fall Harvest Fest and Pumpkin Giveaway. That will be held at our district office Friday, October 24th from 3 to 7 p.m. We'll also be hosting a Thanksgiving turkey giveaway, and that'll be also at our district office on Thursday, November 13th from 3 to 7 p.m. also. We will also be hosting a Young Ladies Empowerment Tea Party. That will be in Antioch, and that will be Saturday, December 13th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. A stocking stuffing community event, which will be held also at our district office in Concord. That'll be Friday, December 12th from 6 to 8. And then a toy drive giveaway at our district office on Thursday, December 17th. We welcome your partnership and community and participation in these family-friendly gatherings, which celebrate the season, support neighbors in need, and engage our community in activities that reflect the unique spirit of our district. Thank you for allowing us to share these updates, and we look forward to seeing many of you at these events. Thank you.
Nicely done, and I think we have a question from Councilmember Silva.
Yeah. Thank you for being here tonight. You know, since redistricting occurred after the census in 2020, I believe the District 15 is different, its configuration is different than it was in the prior decade. I hate to quiz you, but which parts of Walnut Creek are in District 15? Do you know offhand?
Offhand, I'm not quite sure which parts. Are you sure? It's along that border, and it's about 400 constituents, so it is a much smaller portion, yeah. But I can get back to you with the specific areas if you'd like.
I actually know.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's up near the Lenardi's grocery store.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's not where I was thinking. Okay, we might have another question for you,
Oh,
ladies. Thank you
just-
for both being here.
If I may request you leave your cards or some contact information, that'd be
Absolutely,
great.
yeah. We can do
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I too just wanted to thank you both for being here. And it sounds like you're going to keep your boss busy this fall season with a lot of
Yeah,
fun events.
definitely.
And it speaks volumes that, you have 400 constituents in Walnut Creek, but you came and presented tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll see you guys soon.
Okay, take care. Any other members wishing to address the council on public communications? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to council member and staff announcements, reports, and activities. I'll turn to the city attorney and ask if we have any closed session items.
We have no closed session reports. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney, and to our city manager, Dan Buckshire.
Yeah, good evening, Dan Buckshire, City Manager. One update this evening regarding the state legislative session that just concluded on Saturday, September the 13th, which I should note was extended one day from the standard session, which is fairly unusual. There were last-minute negotiations, and the legislature agreed to extend this session. I thought I'd just give everyone a sense of scale. For those that work with these matters, we have a sense of that scale, but I think for folks that don't, it's always quite telling just to see how much activity occurs in Sacramento. 2,397 bills were introduced to the legislature this year, meaning potential new laws were introduced. And of those, 804 were passed by the legislature. And that number is actually down a bit. It's normally between 1,000 and 1,200 in any given year, but this year a new rule went into effect that limited any one member of the legislature to introducing no more than 35 bills over the two-year legislative session, and this was the first year of the two-year session. The governor, on average, tends to veto about 15% of bills, which means we will likely have around 680 new laws come 2026. In terms of the impact to the city or to residents, obviously there are many. There are those that we track through the California League of Cities, as well as through Townsend Public Affairs and other networks that we have to try to understand the impact to the city. We are receiving those updates. I anticipate that the city will be asked to weigh in on some of these bills, whether to support or veto. It's too late to amend at this point. Either the governor signs them or vetoes them. We'll work that through our legislative committee of the council and send those letters, and if needed, bring something to the city council if it could be done in a timely manner and if it's warranted. And then in addition, in terms of process, once the period in which the governor can sign, which is up until October 13th, is complete, we will likely be bringing an update to the council before the end of the calendar year with a review of the legislative session. And that is it, Councilmember Francois, unless there are any questions for me.
Any questions of Mr. Buckshire? I'm not seeing Mayor Pro Tem jumping towards his mic, so I think we're good. Who'd like to lead us off on council member updates and reports? How about Mayor Pro Tem? Is it okay if we start with you?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. First of all, I wanted to mention that I'm in Boston. I am chairman of the board of our County Connection bus system, and there's a national Public Transportation Authority conference this week, and I led the delegation here, which is why I'm in Boston. I return tomorrow, so this is why I'm remotely calling in today. Just a couple of things to mention. First of all, on the conference itself, as long as I'm here, we're talking about innovation. And one of the things that really excited me the most is I am hearing about a proposal, anyway, to have a small autonomous vehicles or essentially train of some sort going between Antioch and Brentwood. And how that will impact us is if that comes to fruition, that will be fewer people that are coming over the hill, over Railroad Avenue, Kirker Passing, Mesa Valley Road to get to the freeway, people, or even to go to BART. people will be able to go directly from being in Brentwood or in Oakley. So that was exciting to me. It's years down the line, but we'll keep our fingers crossed that actually happens.
Mayor Pro Tem, we're having a
little.
little problem hearing you, and working with our audio staff here. Is there a way to adjust the volume on your device?
Let's see. Are you not hearing me very well now?
That's better.
Oh, that's better? Okay, great. Did you hear what I had to say, or should I repeat it?
You trailed off at the end there about some service between Antioch to Central County.
So there is a proposal that currently Tri-Delt is working with another company to provide autonomous small trains, essentially, to go between Antioch and Brentwood, which would certainly help any traffic that's coming over Railroad Avenue to Kirker Pass to Ignacio Valley Road. Essentially, should that be completed in the years ahead, it'll alleviate some traffic that's coming through Walnut Creek on YVR. We'll keep our fingers crossed. There's a lot of dominoes to have to fall before that actually happens. I was part of a panel a couple of weeks ago by the League of Women Voters. It was in the library in downtown. There were 5 panelists, including myself, the Concord mayor, county supervisor, superintendent of Contra Costa County Schools, and the vice mayor of Antioch, all discussing how we'll be impacted locally with the federal budget cuts to our local communities, or through DOGE as we've heard them. Lots of important information was discussed, and interested residents will still be able to view it now on Walnut Creek TV channel and on the city YouTube channel. So I encourage people to watch that, because if we hear that there's going to be $300 million in cuts across California or those kind of things, what does it actually mean for us on the ground in Walnut Creek? And some great information came out during that panel. In addition, the city hosted an event that the public was invited to for an opportunity to see about the environmental impacts of the Heather Farm Swim and Community Center. Thanks to Rich Payne and his team for putting this informative session together. Some great involvement from the community on that. I was invited to Las Lomas. This was a first for me, where they had a mock rock dance competition for homecoming week. It's a great turnout, fantastic participation and enthusiasm with hundreds of students. And great to see Las Lomas and Spirit of School back in session there. I also wanted to quickly mention that there is a new organization starting up called Friends of Civic Park. And the first meeting is going to be on September 27th from 9 to 12 p.m. People can help make our Walnut Creek, the actual creek itself, a more sustainable environment. So people can meet at the Bridge at Civic Park, again, September 27th on Saturday from 9 to 12. The first day will include removing invasive plants and focus efforts on improving the creek environment for native species and opening up the vistas of the creek. And lastly, I just want to mention that the Jewish high holidays begin next week, which includes Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. May the new year be a sweet one for our entire community of residents, Jewish and non-Jewish alike. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember DeVinny, would you like to go next?
Sure. Good evening. Just a few things to report. This last weekend, I was at our booth at the farmers market, and there was great engagement there. It's really nice to meet members of the community in person and get a chance to, follow up with them, answer their questions. Afterwards, I was over to the Head West Market on Main Street. So that's an event that the Downtown Association has hosted on Main Street downtown. It's got local artisans, crafts, merchants, great food and music. The next one will be December 14th. I think it starts at 11 a.m. So you could actually hit the farmers market and then walk over to the Head West Market. Let's see, in addition, I moderated an event for Uplift Home Care, which was put on by Marlene and Adam Bartlett, the owners at the Coin Coffee Shop. Shout out to DJ and Tristan for hosting the event. It was basically honoring our caregivers and really showing sort of their struggles as well as the tremendous empathy and dedication it takes to be a caregiver, sometimes a very thankless job that's going on behind the scenes, and really affects everyone in the community at some point. So that was a really great event. I attended the elected official webinar for Planned Parenthood yesterday, and they announced that the federal funding had been cut to Planned Parenthood for the next year. So, only about 3% of the services from Planned Parenthood are, say, abortion related. A lot of it is primary care, STD testing, contraception, cancer screening. So through direct funding and also funding through Medicaid or Medi-Cal, that will mean about a $300 million loss for the state, and it will affect healthcare here in Contra Costa County to the tune of about $5 to $7 million. So additional strains for our healthcare system. And then to wrap things up on a happier note, we celebrated my dad's 90th birthday this past weekend, so happy birthday, Dad.
Nice. Happy birthday, Mr. DeVinny. And Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much. Well, I will announce that or mention that a couple of weeks ago we had a meeting of the Housing and Community Development Subcommittee of the Council, and we reviewed the process for submitting an RFP and requesting proposals for affordable housing developments that might come forward. And we also reviewed our quarterly update on our progress toward the housing element. And Councilmember Francois and I are on that committee, and the housing element quarterly report will be coming to council in October. The East Bay Radio Communications System Authority Board met recently, and we adopted a comprehensive financial policy, which the board has been, or the agency has been in existence since 2007. So we have been progressing toward a full policy, and it is now adopted. We also voted to authorize the purchase of a radio shelter for the Walton Lane radio site, which will be going up in Antioch. So it's just one further step to closing a gap in coverage that's out in East County for the radio system. The Association of Bay Area Governments Executive Committee will meet this Thursday evening, and the primary topic of conversation will be priority conservation areas, which are being adopted and amended so that we can continue across the 9-county Bay Area to preserve green spaces for natural spaces, working agriculture, and other priorities around climate change, et cetera. And that's a really, really important project, and I'm glad we're making progress on that. I will mention that I watched the webinar yesterday from the League of California Cities on the bills that the cities around the state think are particularly important, those to support and those to suggest the governor say no. We received a Cal Cities action alert today by email from Samantha Brightman, who is our regional public affairs manager for Cal Cities. I'll mention a couple of these. Thankfully, the governor was being asked to sign it's Senate Bill 456. It's called the Community Beautification Act, but it's actually to rescind and make exempt muralists from being painting contractors. For some reason, the state regulatory authorities thought that muralists should be contractors. And so the state legislature had to propose an exemption, a very narrow exemption for these muralists so that we can continue to have murals and have painting contractors be contractors. So that is on the governor's desk. Also on the governor's desk is Assembly Bill 650, which is Diane Pappins out of San Mateo. This is the planning and zoning housing element legislation, which would give us a longer period of time to actually do work on our housing elements, and just as importantly, require the Housing and Community Development Department of the state to be clear in their feedback. and make it clear what they need us to do. I will also mention that Assembly Bill 620 is on zero emission vehicle rentals, and as we look at our sustainability action plans, some of the challenges we have is you can buy an electric vehicle, but you have to have the charging infrastructure available for it. And this, if this adopted by the governor or signed by the governor, this bill would allow municipal agencies such as cities, counties, and special districts to rent electric vehicles so that the charging infrastructure would be part and parcel of the rental agencies' infrastructure and provider and what they would provide to our cities. So I think that's an important way to expand our infrastructure for electric vehicles. And there are many others around wildfire, around theft of metals, et cetera, et cetera. After all, there's 800 to choose from. So thank you very much. And I will give another plug for the food drive. We need lots of friendly people to stand in front of grocery stores inviting customers on September 27th to donate food. So it'll be lovely weather. It's an easy task and no one gets mad. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I'll round it out with thank you, Councilmember Silva, for reporting on our HCD committee. We will get the quarterly report on housing element update, and it's something that we've normally only received an annual report on. So I think it highlights the importance of the housing element, that we'll start getting quarterly updates on that and making sure that we're staying on track to meet the many objectives and goals that we adopted in the housing element. I'm glad to hear there's some legislation that might give us some more time to do that in the future and more clear guidance. But impressed with the progress that's being made. Happy that we have an amount of affordable housing funds that we can go out to request proposals for new affordable housing projects next year. So exciting things happening on the housing front in the city. Last week I attended the chamber meeting. I sat in for the mayor, who's the liaison to the chamber, and received an update on our general plan update, which from the Community Development Department, and our director, Erica Vandenbrand, provided that. And that's one of the 5 or 4 priorities that the council adopted earlier this year. We'll have a report on that later. But it was interesting to get the feedback from the business community on what their focus in terms of the general plan is. And not surprisingly, economic development is high among them, in addition to kind of land use and making sure that we're allowing for balanced land use, not just housing, but jobs for the housing. I think Mark Orcutt from the East Bay Leadership Council, when he was asked, well, how would you define economic development? He said, well, very simply, it's policies that help businesses start, stay, and grow. And so they're interested in having that kind of ethic represented in our general plan update, and we're just kicking off the process. There were other comments about emerging technologies and how, we've got a zoning code that reflects maybe the 90s or the early 2000s, and maybe wasn't envisioning autonomous vehicles or artificial intelligence. And so the challenges with bringing it up to speed and being relevant and fresh when it's a 20-year document. So we've got some challenges ahead of us, but I think we're up to the task. After that meeting, I attended the Walnut Creek downtown meeting. I serve as the liaison to that body this year. One of their signature events is coming up later this month. It'll be hosted again in Civic Park on September 26th and 27th, and that's Oktoberfest. And it's a great time. There's bands, there's beer, there's lederhosen, all of the above, and there's plenty of volunteer opportunities. So if you're interested in kind of serving at a ticket booth, or if you're of age and able to serve wine or beer, please sign up on Walnut Creek Downtown's website. They also gave an update on their vision plan. Each of us had the opportunity to provide input on that earlier this year. They have a draft of the plan prepared by their consultant. Their board now will be meeting internally to provide feedback on that plan and then roll it out to the larger public probably later this year. We got an update that good news, and Original Joe's is hopefully likely going to be reopening sometime in October. If you hadn't heard, shortly after their opening, they had an unfortunate kitchen fire which closed them down. The city reacted very quickly from the permitting standpoint, and so now it's just a process of getting the work done, getting the new equipment in. But October, fingers crossed, we'll have another grand opening.
They would be the ones gathering a bunch of individuals or a bunch of banks or mutual funds that would add up to that amount, and through that process they would set the interest rates. The competitive sale process is very much like what the city's used to for public bid projects. We actually set a date, Tuesday, 8 o'clock, bring your envelope with the lowest interest rate that you're willing to buy the city's debt or buy the city's bonds, and the low rate wins. So we don't know until that moment, and it's instantaneous, when 5 to 10 different broker dealers will come to the table with their best bid, what it is. As you can imagine, it generally, they know they have to sharpen their pencil because they're going to have competition on that day. We anticipate the city is a very strong credit. You do not issue debt, so this will be very exciting for a lot of folks to be able to get their hands on Walnut Creek paper, is what they would call it. And so at this point, we are anticipating that this structure, should the council approve it in November, would be recommended to be through a competitive sale. I'm going to turn over the actual, we're going to drop down now into the actual proposed kind of structure of the financing and let Chris, the attorney, get into those details.
Thank you, Craig. Good evening, council. My name is Chris Lynch, and I work at the law firm of Jones Hall. So we will act as the city's bond counsel and disclosure counsel. So the bond counsel helps the city structure the deal in compliance with state law and provides the tax exemption opinion that investors rely on to buy the bonds and give lower tax exempt rates. As disclosure counsel, we help the city comply with federal securities laws, and I'll spend a little time talking about what that means. This slide lists the 4 most common types of financings by cities in California, and I'm going to start with the 2nd through 4th and then hit the lease revenue bonds. General obligation bonds are approved by, for California cities, approved by a 2/3 vote of the registered voters, and they can only be used to finance acquisition and improvement of real property. School districts are actually the most common issuers of general obligation bonds because their threshold for approval is typically 55% compared to the 2/3 for California cities. The second structure is called utility revenue bonds or enterprise revenue bonds. Many cities have water, wastewater, solid waste enterprises that they need to issue bonds to finance improvements for that enterprise. I know that's not the case for the city of Walnut Creek. Those do not require voter approval, but their rates are subject to Proposition 218. The third type that's listed, the bottom entry, is special tax and assessment bonds. These are additional special taxes or assessments levied on property for a specific purpose. So Mello-Roos is typically used by developers to finance the public infrastructure needed for a new project, and assessment bonds are often used for things like utility undergrounding or septic to sewer improvements, and this type of financing can also be used for perpetual public services. The final source of financing through bond financing is the lease revenue bonds or certificates of participation. In that structure, cities can enter into lease financings payable from their general fund from any unrestricted funds. And in your case, Measure O, as a general tax approved by 50% of the voters plus 1, is considered a general tax that can be used for any purpose. So in this case, that would be available to pay lease payments that the city would make to finance the aquatic and community center. So a lease revenue bond is payable, as I said, only from unrestricted funds within the general fund. It sounds exotic, and I'll run you through the structure on the next slide, but I can tell you that lease financings have been used by California cities, counties, and school districts since the 1940s, when the California Supreme Court first upheld this structure as being available for this purpose. Okay, so this simple, non-confusing structure diagram will explain all you need to know about lease revenue bonds. So the general structure of a lease revenue bond is first you need a second party called a joint powers authority. And the city takes an existing city asset. In this case, we may be talking about the Lesher Fine Arts, Performing Arts Center. We may be talking about City Hall. And the city leases that to a third party called a Joint Powers Authority. The Joint Powers Authority leases that asset back to the city, and the city agrees to pay lease payments that are equal to the debt service on the bonds. The bonds are issued by the Joint Powers Authority, and they are payable from the lease payments made by the city. The proceeds of the bonds, realized from the sale of the bonds by the Joint Powers Authority, are used to finance the project for the benefit of the city. So Joint Powers Authority, I want to make sure I do a good job explaining that. So in order to do a lease financing, you need a counterparty. In most California cities, they formed Joint Powers Authorities with their redevelopment agency as the counterparty for their lease financing structures. Unfortunately, as you know, redevelopment agencies were dissolved and replaced with successor agencies. I understand your successor agency is soon itself to be dissolved because it's satisfied its enforceable obligations. So your existing joint powers authority between the city and the successor agency will no longer be available to be used for financing. So staff is going to recommend to you for this financing, this proposed financing, that you form a new joint powers authority. And the second party to that joint powers authority would be the city's housing authority. The city council acts as a legislative body of the park. I said housing authority, I meant parking authority. The city council acts as a legislative body of the parking authority. The city council would also act as a legislative body of the joint powers authority. Joint powers authorities have two sets of powers: the common powers of its members, which includes, in your case, the power to lease and acquire real property, and then it has the authority given it under state law, including the authority to issue lease revenue bonds. Would you like me to pause there and answer any questions about joint powers authorities?
How much longer is the presentation?
I would say probably 5 to 7 more minutes. I'm going to spend a little time on federal securities laws.
Let's pause there then.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions on that one.
Yeah.
Councilmember DeVinny.
So the parking authority, that is a government agency, right? For the JPA, you need to have like 2 government agencies that bond. Isn't it sort of just a subcategory of Walnut Creek City? How is that seen as a separate agency? That was one of the questions I had.
It was established under state law.
Okay.
That allows the cities to establish joint parking authorities, and the city council declared itself to be the legislative body of that parking authority, but it is a separate legal entity.
All right. And then another question. So we're leasing possibly the Lesher Center or City Hall to this JPA at, I guess, any amount that we determine. Could be 0, could be, because I mean, if we have to lease it back at the full payment for the bonds debt service, then I imagine we're not leasing it to them for very much money.
So yes, the lease payments will be approximately equal to the debt service, or be equal to debt service on the bonds. Under California law, that lease payment needs to reflect fair rental value for the asset being leased. So one of the things that we will help the city do is evaluate the leased assets, evaluate their value, both the replacement cost insured value of the improvements and an estimated real property value. And then given the short time period of the bonds, only 8 years, usually with over 30 years, we just look at the aggregated value of the real property and improvements and consider that to be its fair rental value. So we usually look for approximate relationship between the principal amount of the bonds and the value of the leased property. Here, where you have amortization over a much shorter time of 8 years, we may need to have a relatively higher value than the actual principal amount of the bonds.
I mean, you're talking about the improvements to the swim center.
No, we're talking here about the leased assets, so Lesher Performing Arts Center or City Hall. Now, I want to emphasize it's not a mortgage, so nobody will come and take those assets if you don't make your lease payments. What they will more likely do is sue you on an annual basis for you to make those payments. But there's not a risk of losing City Hall or the Lesher Performing Arts Center in this context.
But if we have to lease that building to the JPA at fair market value and then lease it back at fair market value, where's the delta? Where's the debt service?
Well, so the lease payment made by the Joint Powers Authority will be a lump sum payment equal to the proceeds of the lease revenue bonds. And that will be used to finance the Aquatic and Community Center.
One time.
That's right. And then the lease payments made by the city will be semi-annual payments in an amount equal to the semi-annual principal and interest on the bonds. Okay. And the city staff, I believe, is planning to recommend that upon completion of the Aquatic and Community Center, it would replace the Lesher Performing Arts Center and the City Hall as the lease asset. If it's not, the reason you do that is under the California cases upholding lease financings, if the improvements that are being leased are under construction and not available for use and occupancy at that time, then you can't commit to pay lease payments for them. So we pick another asset to start with, and then when the asset that's being financed is complete, then it can be substituted in as the lease property. And I said, again, I just want to highlight, I know it sounds a little exotic and complex, but it's been a standard feature of California public finance since the 1940s.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Silva, any questions?
So if I was sitting at home listening to this, I would probably have changed the channel by now. But the question would be in my head, well, why somebody's going to use the phrase shell game, because that's what it feels like. It's moving, these moving parts. Why do we need to do this leasing option? Why not just float the bonds ourselves?
Right. So
pay the debt as it accrues.
So California cities, counties, and school districts only have the power to do the things that California law expressly authorizes them to do, subject to limitations in the California Constitution.
Okay.
So the California Constitution says that cities, counties, and school districts cannot commit future year revenues without a 2/3 vote. So the lease financing structure is tied to use and occupancy of the leased asset. There can be no acceleration if you don't make your payments. If there's damage or destruction to the asset, we make sure there's insurance available to rebuild the project so that the lease payments can continue to be made, and we pay for rental interruption insurance during the construction period. So the courts have upheld that this meets that requirement because you're not committing to pay more than each year's payments from that year's revenues.
Okay, so it meets California law that was established obviously before the 1940s, because this system came into place as a solution to meet
That's
the
right.
requirements of the California Constitution.
So the California constitutional provision I mentioned is considered by the California Supreme Court to be a balanced budget measure. And so that's why it's important to focus on the annual nature of the payments rather than the payments in their aggregate. You can't be obligated to pay the aggregate amount. You can only be obligated to pay the annual payments.
So unlike the federal government.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a quick question. I want to take a step back for a minute, just for the benefit of the residents and people that may be watching and just a little unclear on why we're doing this in the first place. Walnut Creek has historically not incurred any debt. So why is debt at all being recommended for this project?
Let the city manager weigh in on that.
Sure, I can speak to that one. The other option would be to accumulate the funds over time. As we know, the primary funding source, not the only funding source, but the primary funding source is Measure O, which is generating roughly $12 to $12.5 million a year, of which about $9 million is being set aside for future payment and construction of the center. So if you do the math, if we're looking at a $77 million facility, it would take roughly 9 years of saving those funds, assuming there's not inflation on the cost of the existing building, which there would be. So in reality, it could take a decade or more to save that money in order to build a new facility. So the debt financing is very similar to the concept of buying a new house, where you take a loan and make the annual payments or monthly payments or semi-annual in this case on the debt service so that you can build the asset sooner and then pay off the asset over a set number of years, as opposed to savings as you go, which, as I mentioned, could take a decade or longer in this instance.
So essentially, this could in fact be saving us money by doing it.
I don't know about saving money, but it could on construction costs. Yeah, if construction costs were inflating at a greater rate than the interest rates on the bonds, then yes, it could save money. It would depend on how interest rates and inflation change over time.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're set for now.
Okay, so we'll get back into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts on what happens if you are going to go out and borrow money. And I'll first start by saying city manager is absolutely correct. The real financial analysis that you would do on this project is we're borrowing money at a fixed rate, so we would know on day one exactly what the cost of funds are to the city. We're expecting that this is going to be in the 3% range, 3 to 3.5%. But the speculation is, well, what would the construction cost increases be? If anybody wanted to bet, would we say that over the next 6-7 years, would the rate be higher than 3 to 3.5%, right? And if you were getting further behind, it would be like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, where you would get done and realize you got to just keep going because you can't get it done fast enough. As part of issuing debt, aside from the legal structure that Chris just went through, we need to effectively get a report card for the city that investors then can know the city's likelihood to repay the obligation. The rating agencies, as you know, they have a credit score that they will give you, similar to our personal numbers, except it's grades like in school. And they break it into 5 categories. There's the local economy, which you don't, as a governmental agency, don't really control, but you guide, right? So how well is your local economy? Financial performance, you've got absolutely great policies in place. As was mentioned, the city's always paid cash for most of its improvements, so it hasn't had to get itself too far leveraged in terms of debt. But there's financial performance piece. There is the management. How does the management work from a city council down to the executive and then department heads? There's the debt and liabilities. In your case, almost nothing. I had one of my colleagues, Mike Meyer, in front of you all last year regarding your pension liabilities. That is considered also a debt, right? For most cities, it's actually the biggest debt you have, even over any kind of bond issues. So, and then the other one is fund balance, or your financial position, your balance sheet. So they will look at all of that, and sticking it through their sausage making machine, they will come up with a grade. These are the 3 primary rating agencies that are involved in municipal finance. There's Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch Ratings. They have very similar scores. Obviously, AAA is the best one. That's what you want. The federal government does not have that. And then it works its way down, AA, all the way down. Investment grade is still in the BBB category. Anything below that triggers a lot of investor types. Some of the banks, some of the mutual funds, they can't invest in anything below investment grade. So that's where you think some of the corporate, the junk bonds that you hear about, those all usually fall into that bottom category. But the idea, and we would anticipate that the city will be high AA category, if not potentially from a GO perspective, right up there against the AAA. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris to kind of go quickly through some of the disclosure information that you'll need to know as part of making the approval process in November.
So just on the rating, I think it's implied, but the higher the rating, the lower the rate?
Yeah, I apologize for not saying that. That's absolutely right. The stronger and higher the rating category the city gets, the more aggressive and the lower the interest rates will be that you'll get from investors.
Generally, can you speak to kind of what the difference in gradations are between a AAA and a AA? How far do you drop down?
So, since I'm a finance guy, let's talk the math. So if you were right now borrowing money, let's just say for 10 years, AAA as a tax exempt, you would be, let's say, right at 3%. If you were a AA, so you were just one notch down, you would be 305 to 310, so just 10 basis points. And then it's kind of like a hockey stick. It just like, then you drop to a single A, it's probably up another 20. And you get down to the triple B category, you're probably 50 basis points difference between triple A and a triple A and a triple B.
Councilmember Davini had a question on this as well.
I saw that when you go out to the bond market, you can time the market. Is that something that we need to do, or are we just picked our date and we're going out for it? What were your thoughts there?
Well, I had 4 kids and my crystal ball is broken, so I can't tell you exactly which day. We don't, we will probably want to stay away from any elections, and the only one would be the potential state calling for their November election. But we will be able to set the date looking out 2 to 3 weeks. And our firm is constantly watching the market for supply. You obviously want to be out there when the state's not doing $2 billion worth of bonds, right? Because those investors are going to be staring at that and maybe missing an opportunity to be involved in purchasing the Walnut Creek bonds. So we will set a date hard. It'll be a Tuesday or Wednesday, most likely at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Which week we do it will actually be a function of where you are in your bid acceptance and award of the construction, right? Because what we're really trying to do is align this with what you hear from staff when you get those bids in. Where did those bids come? Are they low? Are they high? Are there ad alternates in there that we want to maybe consider? Because that's what we're going to, this financing is going to be the balance of the money that you need for the project. And at that point, we'll figure out when you're going to award, when you're going to need to start drawing money, and we can work backwards from there.
And are you doing like investor outreach and sort of trying to entice people to come to bid on the?
Yeah, there will be a period of time where the disclosure document, which is what they'll rely on, and Chris will talk about that a little bit more, because we can't be telling one person one thing and another person something else. So we will have the formal offering memorandum, which is called a preliminary official statement, and then that will get distributed and blasted nationally to create that. And there are certain channels that goes into that then are is exposed to all of the buyers who would otherwise be buying California paper.
Okay, so I mentioned when I started that one of the things that we help the city do is comply with federal securities laws. Craig mentioned there's a disclosure document sent out to potential investors called an official statement. So I'm here to talk to you about the federal securities laws that apply to your distribution of an official statement, and I'm going to try to give you a very high-level background on it, and then talk about what your responsibilities are under federal securities laws. So I'm going to focus on 4 things that you should walk away from. First, you should know that federal security laws regulate the city's distribution of a disclosure document that we're talking about. Second, that city staff and elected officials are expected to take reasonable steps to make sure that that disclosure document includes all material facts. And the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, which regulates federal securities laws, has given us pretty clear guidance on the type of steps it expects you to take. So I'll explain those to you. Third, city staff and elected officials actually risk personal liability if they don't comply with federal securities law, so it's really important to be aware of it. And then fourth, on October 7th, staff will recommend that you adopt a set of written disclosure policies and procedures that I believe, if followed, and I'll describe what those are likely to say, if followed, will help you comply with federal securities laws. Both of the laws that I will describe today were adopted in the aftermath of the Great Depression, which saw widespread fraud at the expense of investors. So for your purpose, you should know that the 1933 Act, which was the first general federal securities law, and the 34 Act both limit or prohibit fraud in the sale of municipal bonds. The 34 Act created the Securities and Exchange Commission to enforce those laws. The SEC has adopted 2 sets of rules that you should be aware of. One is Rule 10b-5, And that requires the disclosure document that you're going to send to investors to not omit any material facts and not to misstate any material facts. So what's a material fact? A material fact is a fact that there is a substantial likelihood that it would have a significant weight in the deliberations of a reasonable investor. In other words, an investor looking to buy Walnut Creek lease revenue bonds will want to know what is the health of your general fund, what are the long-term risks, what are the primary sources. So we're going to make sure that that disclosure document includes the facts that a reasonable investor would want to know about in investing in the city's, in essence, the city's general fund. In 1989, the SEC adopted a second rule applicable to municipal bonds, Rule 15C212, and it created a requirement to comply with certain rules on a continuing basis, on an annual basis, and when certain significant events happen. So starting with the official statement, we worked on a lease revenue bond that the city of Walnut Creek did in 1997 for its golf course. This is the cover of that official statement. And so that's the document that gets distributed to investors. It has to include a description of the terms of the bonds and the financial and operating data that is material to the repayment of the bonds. We will draft that document in collaboration with Craig's firm and with the city staff. And you'll see it's going to be a 100-page document that describes all of the revenues and expenditures and budgets of the city of the last 5 years, and we'll talk about risks to future payment. As I mentioned, there's now a continuing disclosure requirement, so if you issue bonds in the manner that Craig has described, you will sign a continuing disclosure undertaking that will require you to do 3 things. 1, post your audited financial statements each year on a site hosted by the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. 2nd, to update the financial and operating data that was included in the official statement at the time of initial disclosure on an annual basis so that investors can track how things are going along and make trades on that basis in the secondary market. And the 3rd thing, there's a list of 16 significant events such as bond defaults, rating changes, bankruptcies, certain significant events that the SEC has determined are so important that when they happen, you should tell investors about it. So when and if those events occur, you'd be obligated to provide information about that to the market. Okay. Yes.
May I ask a question? Could you go back one slide? Audited financial statements, are those the city's audited financial statements, or are they audited financial statements of the JPA, which no doubt would really only have these minimal transactions?
Exactly. It will be the city's audited financial statements. And so in the official statement, we'll include revenue and expenditure tables for the last 5 years, and we'll include comparison to budget to actuals for 3 to 5 years, and you'll be updating both the budget and the revenues and expenditures each year when they're completed.
Thank you.
Your ACFR, which you approve on an annual basis, will just get attached and submitted. Okay, I mentioned that the SEC has given us a clear explanation of what elected officials and staff should do when they approve an official statement. And I'll give you a little context. In 1994, Orange County declared bankruptcy. It had pursued an aggressive investment scheme, relying on above market rates of return to balance its budget. It sold notes on an annual basis and was investing those note proceeds, and it did not tell any of the investors the purpose of the notes, that it was invested in these risky investments. The Board of Supervisors, when it approved the official statement, it did so on consent. It didn't deliberate in an open meeting. And even though they were aware that their budget was dependent on these above market rates of return generated by risky investments, they didn't tell investors about it. So in the wake of the Orange County's bankruptcy filing, which did not eventually result in any debt service defaults, the SEC brought an enforcement action against the Board of Supervisors, the county, and members of staff. And then they issued a report to emphasize the responsibilities of elected officials in their exercise of their duties under federal securities law. And the report highlighted again that the supervisors knew of the risks and they did not make reasonable steps under the circumstances to make sure they were telling investors. So the SEC said that they expect you to take appropriate steps under the circumstances, but they also indicated in that report they don't expect you to read the 100-page document word for word. That's certainly fine if you wish to, but what they really care about is if you know about some fact that could affect the city, that would impact its ability to repay the debt service on these bonds through its lease payments, then it expects you to make an effort to ensure it's disclosed, either by talking to staff, talking to your disclosure counsel, raising a question, hey, have you guys disclosed this issue? So that's the level of oversight it expects. Elected officials may not authorize disclosure while recklessly disregarding facts that there is a risk that the local agency won't repay the debt. So in training sessions like this, I like to include this slide because it highlights what the SEC has told us that local agencies should do in order to comply with federal securities law. Now, it issued this guidance in the wake of an enforcement action that they had brought against the city of San Diego. So first, issuers should adopt written disclosure policies and procedures. And again, that's what staff is going to recommend you do on October 7th. In those disclosure policies, you will see that it proposes that there be a disclosure working group established. The city manager, the city attorney, the finance director, and then department heads depending on the type of financing that's being done. The disclosure working group would then work with outside consultants, disclosure counsel, municipal advisor to prepare the disclosure document, and the disclosure working group would not send that official statement to the city council until it concluded that it had met the securities law standard. In other words, that it included all material facts about this financing. At the time of that the city council is being asked to consider and approve the financing and consider and approve the disclosure document, which in the case of the Aquatic and Community Center, I understand may be scheduled for November 18, you would receive a staff report. And in the staff report, there would be about a page summarizing the information I'm giving you here tonight about compliance with federal securities law, so you have one more opportunity to hear about it and understand your responsibilities. And then the resolution under state law following Orange County must be docketed as a separate matter of new business and can't be on the consent calendar. And we'll probably, in addition to the staff report in the presentation, we'll talk again about this, that it has to include material facts. So second, staff should provide appropriate training to elected officials about their responsibilities under federal securities law. SEC is really focused on the training bit. So that's what we're doing here tonight. That's what will be in your staff report, but it's important that you hear this and understand what your responsibilities are. Third, local agencies should focus in their disclosure on the big picture issues facing the city. I told you we're going to generate a 100-page document. In the city of San Diego, the SEC reported that they had a 100-page document, but they had ignored the gorilla in the room, which was their underfunded pension liability. Fourth, local agencies should disclose the good facts with the bad facts. The official statement is not a marketing document. It is a disclosure document, and it discloses the financial health of the portions of the city that are going to repay the bonds. For many issuers, it is pension and OPEB liability that is the key financial risk. It could be litigation. It could be a large employer or taxpayer leaving the city. It could be deferred public infrastructure or a structural imbalanced budget. Any of these things could be the big issue that's facing any particular local agency, and it's your responsibility to make sure that those risks are just as well presented as the strengths of the city, and I know there are many. Finally, the SEC thinks that local agencies should hire competent professionals. That was at question in San Diego, where the audited financial statements misled, did not present an accurate picture of the city's financial health. So again, it's important to always make sure you're employing competent professionals to guide you through these processes. Okay, finally, you should know that the SEC has punished individuals when they acted with an intent to defraud or with a reckless disregard for whether they were misleading investors. In Orange County, the SEC found that the treasurer and the assistant treasurer had knowingly committed fraud, even though they did not personally benefit from the investment scheme. They were trying to generate more money for the county, but still they had defrauded investors. And they were fined and had house arrest. In San Diego, the SEC filed securities law charges against a wide list of city staff, including the city manager, assistant city manager, and treasurer. And the SEC alleged that their audited financial statements, their rating agency presentations, and their official statements were misleading. They fined 3 individuals $25,000 each, and a fourth for $5,000. Now, Westland's water district is the largest agricultural water district in California. The SEC charged them in 2016 with fraud, misleading investors, and a $70 million financing. And the district had to pay a $125,000 fine, and so did the general manager and assistant city manager. So the key point here is, I'm not trying to scare you, but I am trying to make sure you're aware of it. And I think it's really important you know that the punishment comes for knowing intent to defraud or a reckless disregard for facts. And I believe the process that we're talking about here, a working group presenting you with a staff report and an official statement that they've concluded meets the standard, is the type of thing that will ensure compliance with federal securities laws.
Okay, just 2 quick points. Obviously, the mayor isn't here tonight, so we'll make sure that she gets this training so that she's equipped to participate on November 17th or 18th. And then there's going to be a large disclosure packet that the working group puts together that we'll hear at a regular consideration item.
Yes.
And then on an annual basis, is it's just an update to that document, or what happens?
Yeah, so first of all, there's the audit that just gets attached. And for most of the information that needs to be updated, it's already in the audit. But to the extent it's not, there might be a couple tables, large employers, or Measure O revenues if it's not clear in the audit, although I think it will be. So for the most part, and many cities just do it, they make sure that whatever they're obligated to disclose under their continuing disclosure obligation on an annual basis is included in the audit, so it's rote, and there's no risk of failing to do it.
Okay. And is it, the timing has coincided with our ACFR, or it happens so that those efforts can be combined to some
That's
extent?
right. So the typical time limit for turning in your continued disclosure, which isn't wildly popular with investors, is 9 months after the end of your fiscal year. So I'm guessing your ACFR is generally available in December or January. So you have until March 31st to turn in your continued disclosure.
Great. Councilmember Silva?
So continuing on that subject, the professionals help the working group of city staff prepare the draft or the preliminary disclosure document that has the good and the bad. And will that good and the bad be thoroughly presented to us at a council meeting?
So the normal process, and you can derive whatever process you'd like, but the normal process is my firm would sit down and go through publicly available information, budgets, ACFRs, other types of information, and prepare an initial draft of the disclosure document. And the first part of the document summarizes the bond structure, and the second documents the city's finances. We then would circulate it within the working group, and again, with this charge of making sure we're including all material facts, we would work with city staff to make sure we'd ask a lot of questions. Often we can't complete everything. We'd ask questions, and they would add their own updates on that information. The normal process would be once staff and we and Craig's firm felt like the document included all material facts of which we're aware, it would come to council for approval. It would be included in the agenda package. You would get the document, and you would get it as many days in advance as you'd like to have it. One of the reasons we're doing this disclosure training, what seems like a long time ahead of that process, is we don't want to wait until you've gotten the document and haven't had a chance to think through these issues. So we're front loading the training, but the goal is that you would have as much time as you want to read it. Normally, it just goes on the for most public agencies on their 3 or 5 day council agenda, and they have a chance to review it then.
So when is, I'm looking at this, is this on the 18th, or is it before the 18th?
I believe the plan is to bring the financing back for approval on November 18th, and that would include the legal documents and the disclosure documents.
That's correct. And I would also add, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, prior to this coming to the council on November 18th, the rating agencies would also have a thorough review of the county's financial situation and provide their ratings. So that's another check and balance that helps ensure that the information is correct. What I'm also envisioning, the reason the timing's a little bit tight here is we have some deadlines that we need to meet. One is that the bids are due back from the contractors October 23rd. We can't turn it around quickly enough to give you an update in November. And the reason we want to have this approved in November, no later than December, as you may recall, we have the agreement with the Aquatics Foundation we heard from earlier that we need to enter into, at least award a contract by the end of the calendar year to ensure that that Aquatics Foundation agreement remains in place for that $3 million. In addition, we want to move quickly on the project and meet the commitments that we shared with the Measure O folks. That's a long way of saying we have a couple updates between now and then. I'm also envisioning we have the option to brief all of you individually on where we're at, talk through questions ahead of time to make sure you're all comfortable with the information by the time it comes to you at the second meeting in November.
These are complicated documents, and the point size of the type looks really small, but I know I'm looking at a really small screen. So hand out magnifying glasses if it's as small as it looks like. All right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions on the SEC disclosure requirements? Okay. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, so next I'm going to talk a little bit about preliminary analysis and recommendations. And so as we've talked about, and you know, the financing is only a portion of the funds that are needed for this project. So based on the engineer's estimate of $77 million, we have provided for you here a source of funds for the full project amount. And so we have $9 million in the general fund. $7 million of that came from the facilities reserve. The Measure O $9 million set aside in the budget each year will have accumulated to $27 million by the end of the current fiscal year. And then that leaves approximately $41 million in bond financing. And again, this is based on the engineer's estimate. So that may change, but this is the information we have now. And so those funds will be used for the construction as well as soft costs for the total of $77 million. And so,
may I ask a question? Could you go back?
Certainly, sure.
Does these are assumptions, but does the $300,000 to $400,000 in issuance costs included in the 77, or is that going to sit? Is that still to come?
That is still to come. That would be part of the bond financing.
Okay, thank you.
And Kirsten, can you just refresh our memory on how many more slides we have?
4.
Great.
I'll try to go through them quickly.
Stretch.
Some of it's information that you've heard, so
okay, I just
throughout
want to
the
make sure we get
presentation.
to hear from the public too. Thank you.
And so staff is proposing a financing term of 8 years to align with the expiration of Measure O in 2033. If project bids come in significantly higher than the engineer's estimate, staff will seek direction from City Council on the term. Extending the bond term beyond the expiration date of Measure O would provide the city flexibility on having a lower annual debt service payment. However, if it went beyond that 8-year term of when Measure O expires, the general fund would be responsible for those payments going forward. So the structure of the lease revenue bond requires a tangible asset for collateral, which was mentioned earlier. So based on what we know now, we are recommending the Lesher facility, but as was discussed earlier, that will depend on the valuation. So it may end up being Lesher Center and City Hall once we've gone through that process. But again, once the new facilities are completed, the recommendation would be to transfer that lease to those new facilities. The annual debt service payments will remain the same throughout the lease term, so they are fixed. Measure O adopted budget has set aside that $9 million annually to pay for that future debt service. So this chart on this slide shows the annual debt service payments for 3 scenarios. So assuming we might need between $40 million and $60 million to complete this project. And what's important to note here is that even at $60 million for an 8-year term, the annual debt service would still be less than the $9 million budget that we have set for our annual debt service payment in Measure O. So next, I want to just touch on the financing timeline. And so we've talked about some of these along the way, but this is kind of the complete picture of the timeline. And so tonight, we kicked off the financing project back in August, and then tonight we're here for the financing overview. And then we will be back on October 7th to request the approval of the JPA as well as the adoption of a resolution. This is a reimbursement resolution that would allow the city to use bond proceeds to reimburse costs incurred within 60 days prior to the adoption of that resolution. So that would just be an option that we had if we wanted to exercise that. And then in early November, there'll be the credit rating presentation to one of the credit rating agencies, and then they will provide the city's rating in mid-November. At the November 18th City Council meeting, staff will request the approval of financing from the JPA and City Council. So as was mentioned earlier, this will be a competitive sale and the interest rates will be set in early December and the project funded in late December. And so with that, we welcome your feedback. And because this is an informational item, there's no action requested of you this evening, and staff and our consultants are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, that's great. Great presentation, team effort, a lot of good information, and important disclosure information that we need to be aware of. I'd like to open it up now for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to address the council on this item will have 2 minutes, and if you haven't filled out a speaker card beforehand, you're welcome to do so afterwards, or we might know who you are already. Any public comment on this item? And, okay, I'm not seeing anyone rush to the microphone. So there's going to be other opportunities. Obviously, this is a big endeavor. It's a large project. It sounds like it's one of the, maybe the second time the city has used lease bond financing, not the first, but we haven't done so at least in my tenure on council. But we'll have other opportunities and check-in points for people to make comments on these milestones as we move along. Any follow-up questions from the council on this item? Okay, Councilmember Silva.
I'd like a little explanation on the reimbursement legal requirements. I understand the 60 days that we're going to be asked to adopt a resolution, but what can be covered in that and what costs? A lot of the soft costs of the design costs have already been spent, correct?
Correct.
Are those eligible? I mean,
so they would have to be costs that were incurred 60 days prior to the adoption of the reimbursement resolution. So when we come
right around August 1st, then, if we're doing it.
Correct.
October.
So it would be any costs associated with the project that occurred from October 6th prior to 60 days.
Can these be third-party costs as well as?
Yes.
So this requirement is driven by federal tax law, and the IRS imposed this limitation on local agencies issuing taxes and bonds to reimburse prior expenditures. If you want to do that, you have to declare the intent to do it. And there's two types of costs regulated by a reimbursement resolution: hard costs and soft costs. The 60-day rule of reimbursing costs incurred no earlier than 60 days before the declaration of the reimbursement intent applies only to hard costs. You do not have to be limited to that 60-day period for soft costs. But the limitation on soft costs is it can't exceed basically more than 20% of the financing. This resolution is being recommended to you by staff just to preserve flexibility. Federal tax law allows the financing of of capital facilities that are used for governmental purposes, owned and operated by a state or local government, if there are unique rights by private organizations, such as, for example, the swimming organization, then sometimes there's a limitation on issuing taxes and bonds. So it's important to preserve access to as much equity as we can have as we structure this financing, to make sure that the equity can be allocated to things that maybe taxes and bonds couldn't finance, such as portions of the project used on an exclusive basis by third-party organizations.
Thus the couple of bullets in the middle of page 3 of the memo. All right, thank you.
Councilmember DeVinny.
So a couple quick questions. In this process, who are we designating as the trustee?
So we did do a competitive process, and the trustee would be U.S. Bank.
Okay.
Which is also
Outside
our current lender.
organization, that's, okay. All right.
Yes.
And then I was wondering, and we have I think a written debt policy, and I was wondering this, in the scenario of $60 million over 8 years, we'd have payments of, $8,400,000. If our operating budget is around $100 million, does that exceed some thresholds that we're supposed to keep our debt ratio, say, less than 5%, or is there some written policy that states that?
Our debt policy that was recently adopted by this council does address that, but that is specific to debt service that is being paid out of the general fund. And so this is being paid out of Measure O, so it's not subject to that same limitation.
Okay, I thought Measure Go was going into the general fund. No, it's staying in its
It's
own.
actually in a separate fund.
Okay, all right. And then my last.
Just to clarify that, it is part of the general fund, but it's in a sub-fund effectively at the general fund. So if you're looking in the aggregate, it is part of the general fund. We have a sub-fund in which Measure O is tracked separately for reporting purposes, not only for this activity, but also when we report out to the public, we want to make sure we're tracking all revenues and expenditures for Measure O very specifically so we can report out to the voters how it's been used, as opposed to commingling it more generically with all the other funds that come in.
So it wouldn't violate our debt policy in that regard then?
No, in fact, I believe we have a statement in the policy that allows for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my last question is, say we go out for 60 million and we use 50. What do you have to do with leftover bond money? It'd be a nice scenario to be in, but yeah, what would happen in such a case?
So one of the things we'll do actually as part of the structuring of the financing is to make sure that you have authority to finance the Aquatic and Community Center and other authorized projects. It's generally not a good idea to have leftover bonds and have to use them to pay down the bonds early. That's not an efficient use of funds. So my assumption is that staff working with NHA will structure the financing in a way that you're sure that you'll use the bond monies. Tax law requires you to have a reasonable expectation of spending 85% of the proceeds within 3 years. So the assumption is that you'll intend to use your bond monies first and you'll use your equity second. So you may have leftover equity, but you wouldn't have leftover bond money.
And if I could just add to that, one of the decision points that will be made in the future, we don't have enough information, depending how the bids come back from the construction firms, is going to impact how much debt we issue. And one of the considerations would be, depending upon the amount, how much of that other money that we have saved already do we want to use versus issue more or less debt to potentially preserve some of those other funds. And that really depends on what the numbers look like once the bids come in, but that'll be a key consideration that gets to your very point.
So that you wouldn't have to issue all 60 million in bonds all at once. You could do it in a phased process so that you're not borrowing more than you need for the project.
Well, we should know the total cost of the project, and obviously there'll be some variation for potential change orders and that sort of thing that we would want to account. You know, I'd defer to our advisors if we think we would issue one debt or issue it in tranches over time. I'm guessing, given the shorter duration of this use, it would be one tranche, but I'll defer.
Yes, that's correct. We would be only suggesting that there be a single financing, multiple series that you run up transaction costs and paying additional rating fees and things like that. Our financing plan anticipates, once we have a good idea of where the bids are coming in for the project, and we've validated with staff the fund balances that we have for Measure O, to probably build the contingency in on the cash side, on the Measure O side, and then kind of go hard on what we believe we're really comfortable financing, knowing that the cash, in a worst case scenario, we draw down more on the reserves. The example that the Administrative Services Director gave you was, here's our fund balances we have now, and we need 41 million if the project turns out to be 77. we would probably be recommending that we hold back a certain part of those Measure O revenues as your contingency. So maybe you are borrowing 50 million or 48 million or something so that you have that comfort that you're not going to run out. You don't want to be short, right, as you're blowing through this. To Chris's point also about the expenditures, we understand this is a pretty aggressive project to get done in time for the season, and that we're thinking it's 24 months to get to blow through not only the cash but all the bond proceeds as well.
Any further questions, Councilmember Davini? No, thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, we're set. And I just had maybe one or two final ones then. In terms of the schedule, the bids come in on October 23rd, but we're doing the financing on November 18th. So that's okay, even though we haven't signed a contract with a contractor yet? We can.
So that would happen in the same evening. So the intent would be that if we came on November 18th with the contract award, we would also come and request the authority to do the financing.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of kind of the contingency costs, I recall that the facilities reserve there's more in the facilities reserve than just the 9 million, and I think it might be helpful for us to know how much is in that account too when we come back and make the final financing decision.
I can tell you that separate from the money that has already been dedicated to this project, there's 11.7 million in the facilities reserve currently.
Excellent. Sweet. All right. All right, I think we've exhausted this topic. Thank you all for really good counsel and advice on this. How are we doing? Should we power through? It looks like we probably have at least another hour on the next item. Why don't we take a 10-minute, we'll come back at 8 o'clock, so an 8-minute break.
I just told Craig we got to do more than 20 minutes. We got a lot of time.
Okay, welcome back. Next on the agenda is another consideration item, our update on 2025-2026 City Council priorities. And I would invite staff to provide a presentation.
Great. All right, well, good evening, council members, members of the public, staff. Joe Carrozza, assistant to the city manager. I'll be kicking off tonight's presentation on council priorities and the September 2025 update. So thank you for this time this evening to present this update. This is the first update since we came to council in May to present the scopes of work for your council priorities for 2025 and 2026. So by way of background, in February of this year, Council identified 5 priorities for calendar years 2025 and 2026, and they're listed here on screen in alphabetical order. Tonight's presentation is intended to share how these priorities are moving forward and to date and what's on the horizon. This evening, you'll be hearing directly from the staff leads who are moving these projects forward by managing the accomplishments and turning these into real projects and accomplishments and priorities with the help of their teams and beyond. And so that will be Mike Neiman, who will cover economic development and downtown vitality. We'll hear from Candace Rankin-Mumby on environmental sustainability and climate action. Erica Vandenbrand for general plan update. Park and recreation facilities will be done by Rich Payne. And then public safety and social wellness will be covered by Captain Ryan Hibbs. While these leads are the drivers and representatives of the work and accomplishments done to date, these priorities cut across many departments in the city and are accomplished by the support and collaboration of many teams and staff members. And as a reminder, significant progress has been made on many of these priorities to date, but much work does remain in the coming months and years. And some priorities like the general plan update will extend well beyond the 2-year cycle. So for some logistics tonight, each of our leads will come up and present the significant accomplishments and work to date for their respective priorities, and they'll do that so in a high summary level fashion. And then they're going to, before they pass the baton to the next lead to cover the next priority, pause. They'll solicit any feedback, any input, and take any questions that you have. And then with that, I'll go ahead and pass to our first person, Mike Neiman, who will cover economic development and downtown vitality.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Mike Neiman, your Economic Development Manager. And I'll start with economic development. There is a lot that goes into economic development, and the work that we're doing is largely encapsulated through the Economic Development Action Plan, which is a 2-year plan adopted for the 24-25 timeframe. There's been a lot of effort, thought, thinking, and community input that's gone into that effort. And there are many goals that you can see that are captured in that document. They include looking for a strong, resilient, forward-looking economy. There's a lot of business support efforts, permitting, regulatory environment improvements. Downtown continues to be one of the major foci for economic development. There's an effort for higher paying jobs, and there are various policy considerations and performance tracking as part of that. The efforts are broken into 4 major goals or objectives. The strategic objective number 1 is continue building a resilient, inclusive, and diverse economy. A number of accomplishments in that regard since what you've last heard from us are a reinitiation of the mayor visits. That was the program that was restarted after a delay, where now we conduct these on at least a quarterly basis with the mayor. And there's also a number of other less formal business retention efforts where staff continue building relationships and working with the business community through various efforts, communications, and various facets. We also launched a Size Up data tool. That is a tool largely for small businesses. It supports data-driven decision making. And what it does is it provides employers, business owners, property owners with access to resources, to a lot of data for better decision making and investments into their business. Things such as what are the typical payrolls for competitors? What is the saturation and supply of other competitors within a certain region? What are certain costs of doing business? What are typical revenues for like services? So these kinds of performance metrics enable existing business owners, but also prospective business owners, make better decisions about locations where they can maximize revenues and reduce costs, or identify where they may be varying from some of their competitors. We also expanded outreach to specific strategic industries, building relationships with the healthcare industry, the technology industry, and the auto dealer industry as well. And we also continue to collaborate with the Chamber on the upcoming Funders and Founders event. This would be the second event scheduled for November, and the goal for that event is to promote, to put the funders together with some of the potential tech industries and create more awareness and momentum around health tech and other tech options in the Shadelands that would be complementary to the sports mall and some of the uses that have already evolved there. Strategic goal number 2 is to continue creating a business-friendly environment. You could see a number of accomplishments here that have been completed by the Community Development Department that Erica will cover in a bit more detail, that include a launch of the Parcel Viewer platform on the website. There's also an approved contract now for the lien process improvement that will improve the permitting process for our customers. And we're excited to see the lobby open up shortly, and we have gotten a lot of positive feedback from the public on that. Also, within the Economic Development Division, we have continued to engage property and business owners as well as brokers and build new relationships as we better understand some of the challenges and opportunities from the private sector, so we can continue accommodating them and building a resilient economy. And lastly, we have continued serving as a single point of contact, making it easier for businesses to navigate the City Hall process, more notably the outdoor dining program. A lot of the restaurant owners, they're experts in running a restaurant, but not necessarily applying for some of the outdoor dining program elements. So we were able to build relationships and help them navigate the process, making it easier for them. And with this, I will invite Erica to talk a little bit more about some of the community development accomplishments within the specific economic development goal 2.
Thank you very much. I'm Erica Vandenbrand, the Community Development Director, and development is a team sport, and whether it's economic development or development services. And one of the things that's going live tomorrow is a parcel viewer, which takes about 5 different places currently on the city's website, and you have to go and hunt and peck for, when you're trying to go through and do a development, as well as several other outside of the city websites, such as the county parcel data, and essentially combines it into one place, which will make a very powerful tool for our development community to be able to use. And so just wanted to have that announcement there. There we go. And following up on what Mike had said, there's been a substantial effort that's taken place both with an Apex customer service first floor lobby, as well as the development services team, have really focused on creating an ideal customer journey, so that we have been focusing on the physical space on the second floor to be able to have a welcoming, very customer-focused approach for seamless navigation, efficient services, and then sending our customers away with a smile on their faces, which I'm sure you will all appreciate. But this will be realized starting on October 6th when we open the counter on the second floor. So it'll be open for service, except during the noon hour. But then even during the noon hour, people can prearrange for special appointments if that's the only time that they can come in. And we will continue to offer services basically from from the development services counter, both over the counter in person as well as electronically. And then last but not least, this is a preview of things to come, but it's what we have been working on. For a long time, you have all been asking for permit metrics and so forth. So we have an initiative underway, still not ready to launch to the public, but we felt it was important to share with you that the entire development services environment will be able to be captured in terms of the workload and the number of permits coming through and so forth, so that and looking at that over time. But then in addition, probably one of the most frequent questions that you each get, and certainly we get, is why is my permit taking so long? So individuals will be able to look up online under their permit number and see where things are at, and see who actually is holding the next action, whether it's city staff or whether it is the consultant. I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Thank you. So I'll cover the next two goals for economic development. We have a total of 4. The third goal is continue enhancing the downtown experience and tourist attraction. We've made some accomplishments there. More notably, we designed and want to thank Council for adopting the outdoor dining grant. It was very well received by the restaurants. We are happy to report that the first outdoor dining pod has already been established under that grant, largely due to the financial incentive that we were able to provide. And we are working with a number of other restaurants that are currently going through the application process that we're guiding them through, and are cautiously optimistic that you will be seeing several more in short order. We also continue collaborating with downtown Walnut Creek, Visit Walnut Creek, the hotels, other organizations to continue bringing events, vitality, and new experiential experiences to downtown. And strategic objective number 4 is to promote the city brand as a premier destination. We're known for distinguished quality of life, and we want to continue creating the narrative that enforces that and positions us well ahead of the competition. So we do that through a number of efforts. One of the accomplishments that we have completed was an office market study recently. That is part of some of the analysis that will be going into the general plan update to right-size some of the land uses and making sure that we can ensure that all land uses in the city continue performing well and support job generation. We have also, we're currently developing an interactive database that helps us better measure performance over time. We already have an annual data fact sheet that we're putting out, and in addition, we will soon have a more interactive dashboard that compares different metrics over time. We continue operating the city's economic development portion of the website, which serves as the city's window on the internet into the business-friendly nature, and is something that is looked at by prospective tenants, things along that nature. And we're also operating the LinkedIn platform, sharing some of the positive narrative about accomplishments and further enhancing the city's image. And lastly, we are currently working on updating the city's economic development action plan for the next 2-year cycle, and we will be bringing that effort forward to provide you with an update in the December-January timeframe. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions related to economic development.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We have 4 priorities to go. Mayor Pro Tem is on East Coast time. So maybe if we can limit our questions to on this topic to one or two real pressing ones we can get on. And it was a great presentation and very thorough. So we got a lot of good information. Any questions on economic development? I had just one on the pod that came in. Do you know how much that ended up costing?
Yeah, we were told that the total all-in cost was about 45,000.
45.
Yes.
Okay.
Since you asked one question, my one question would be for Erica. What do you see like best case scenario? What's your vision for that walk-up experience? Are people walking into the first floor and being greeted? Is there something? Are they? Is it? There's a sign on the elevator that says go up to the. What does that initial customer experience look like?
So Smadar and others on the development services team have been really instrumental. So if you have recently been through, City Hall, you've noticed a couple things. So one is that on the first floor, a lot of the monitors and everything have been taken away. They've been moved up to the first floor otherwise, so that people aren't left with a presence that is not friendly. So that on October 6th, we'll have wayfinding signage. We will have directionality so that people are directed to go to the elevator. So signage will be there. Go up to the second floor. You'll be greeted by a human individual, and then if we're able to have if we have the people there right then that are not working with other clients, they'll be able to be served immediately. Otherwise, we have a queuing system so that you get your place in line, so that it'll be very seamless, and then you can go from person to person to person to have that experience. No longer having to go to the information booth to be led up and so forth, because the elevator will be there. For other things within City Hall, they'll be able to go to the information booth and have things directed there.
One question?
So if you had a crystal ball and what you know after, actually you've been here a little over a year, I think, maybe a year and a half, what is our greatest opportunity and what is our greatest challenge when it comes to economic development?
So I will answer this question more in the general plan context because they're kind of layers from strategic
Things
to
change over
tactical.
time. Yeah.
But I would certainly say that we have a number of strategic opportunities from our central location and being really well positioned within various modes of transit in the East Bay, having the momentum and business clusters that are well established. Given that location, having the quality of life elements, educated labor force, having a downtown that is a jam from almost any kind of an experience. So there's certainly a lot of assets to build on. And all of these work synergetically as an opportunity. I think in terms of a challenge, certainly uncertainty about the future of workspace, specifically as relates to office, and having some of the conversations about how can we best position ourselves for the futures of Shadelands, and also making sure that we remain having conversation about how do we remain a regional job center with an increase in market pressure for housing and some of the regulation that is making housing something that we're seeing a lot more, where at times it's eating away at the supply of land that has traditionally been job serving and supporting some of the higher paying jobs that we have been able to develop here. So I think those are some of the conversations that are really important in the general plan context.
All right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions on economic development?
No questions. Just want to really thank Mike and Erica for for what's been going on to date. I'm hearing fewer complaints and more accolades about the department in general, which is great. So thank you.
Thank you. And next we have sustainability. So I'd like to introduce Candace.
Good evening, council members. As Mike mentioned, I'm Candice Rankin-Mumby, the city's sustainability manager, and I will be discussing our environmental sustainability climate action topic tonight. This priority area focuses or aligns very closely with our sustainability action plan that was adopted by the council in 2023. So we're going to touch on just a few of the highlights of what we've been accomplishing over the last few months here on creating a more sustainable community and addressing carbon emissions and our impacts on the environment. So first we'll touch a bit on the work we've been doing and generally in the building space, and we really focus on this as one of our main areas as there are carbon emissions that come from the use of energy in buildings, so either from natural gas power in the building itself or what is being put into the electricity. So a couple of big highlights here. One, there's been a lot of work done over the summer and this year on the Lesher Center and its HVAC systems to make them more efficient and modern. And so this is going to have a variety of improvements. One should definitely reduce the carbon emissions and make it more efficient. That will also provide energy savings and also bring better comfort to our patrons within the Lesher Center. So this is really one of those big win-win-win areas in the work that we do, and we look forward to doing more of these types of facility improvements throughout the city. The second note here is on ongoing work that we do partnering with MCE, our community choice aggregator for providing energy. They work alongside PG&E to provide energy to the vast majority of accounts within Walnut Creek, and we're working on trying to get more of those accounts on their 100% renewable deep green plan. This is for those folks who have just a little bit extra flexibility in their energy budget. It can be a really low effort way to make a big impact on your household's energy footprint, and it's especially helpful for renters or other folks who might not be able to put solar on their house. It's a way for them to still have 100% renewable energy. So we promote this through our different newsletters and social media and activities, and that continues to be ongoing. The last note on here is less of an accomplishment and more of just an update on kind of a change in the environment since we last spoke with you in May. So Assembly Bill 130 was adopted by the California legislature in June, and it's a large bill with several elements to it, but one in particular applies to the ability to adopt REACH codes or amend the building code in general over the next 6 years. There are some exceptions to this that relate to allowing certain cities to make adjustments for environmental sustainability reasons. Our analysis with our city attorney's office, our current status is that would not apply to us. This means some of the updates that we came to you with in May, we're not going to be able to approach in the next 2 years the way that we had expected, because this law will apply for the next 6 years. So we're still sort of analyzing this change and looking at what other opportunities we can have to still achieve our goals, just in different ways. So more to come on that, but we'll likely be able to come up with some creative solutions to still be working towards reducing carbon emissions from residential buildings in the city. The next topic that we're going to cover is our upcoming gas-powered leaf blower ban. So staff have transitioned internally to the vast majority of cases using electric leaf blowers. Now that that's kind of been taken underway, we're really focused in our division, and this is kind of our number one topic right now, of working on bringing forward to you the proposed policy for community-wide gas-powered leaf blower ban. This is something that was a commitment made in the 2023 Sustainability Action Plan. So we know that this will have a really big impact on our community, so we're doing a lot of work on outreach at the moment. We've sent postcards to about 400 landscapers, HOAs, and property owners, alerting them to the fact that this is a policy that we're looking to undertake. Our office assistant, Sophia, is following up and calling each of those contacts as well, so that they'll hopefully receive that information in one of those two ways. And then we're making several updates on our website. So we have a dedicated web page. The URL is on the screen. If you just type Walnut Creek leaf blowers, you'll also likely find it. That's continuing to be updated with more information and resources translated into Spanish as well. And then we have an email newsletter for folks who can sign up if they're interested in learning more and staying up to date. So we're trying to make sure that everybody knows this policy is likely coming, because it really is going to be important for compliance reasons to see the biggest effect from it, for people to know that it's there. So this is a big focus, and we expect to be back to you very soon later this fall with more information on that policy. And then in an effort to keep things brief, we do only have one more topic that I'll highlight from the report today, and that's our efforts around reducing generated and landfilled solid waste. And so these updates really focus on our efforts around events. So we permit a lot of events. Either we have rentals within our facilities or we help with permitting for events that take place in public spaces. And those events can generate a significant amount of waste, particularly if they have food involved. And so we are working on updating the guidance that we have for folks who rent on, what they can do voluntarily. And then we're also looking at the permitting process to see if we can improve potentially more stringent requirements there, what impacts that would have on our event providers. And then we also work closely with Walnut Creek Downtown, who, as you know, put on a lot of wonderful events in the community, and they also really take seriously the waste generation elements of that. So they reached out to us about, potentially brainstorming on ways that we can help them. They're already doing a really great job, but, how can they go even another step further? And so we're looking to partner with them in their 2026 event season on just taking some of those potential guidances as a kind of a test case at their events and really using their knowledge to help us make sure that whatever recommendations we're making are practical for the community. So that's the last overview slide that I have, but happy to take questions on anything that I just mentioned or anything that's included in the report.
Any questions on environmental sustainability? Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much for the report and for all the work that you're doing in this arena. It's complicated, it's a lot, and there's a lot of moving parts, I know that. Regarding the gas-powered leaf blowers and outdoor equipment, one of the concerns that I anticipate us hearing is that it's more costly, tariffs, extra batteries you have to carry, how efficient is it, et cetera. Are we collecting data on that so that we get that full picture?
Yes.
When we discuss it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we're doing, in addition to the outreach that I mentioned, we're doing a lot of research on sort of the policy development side of that. So there's kind of two big sides of that I think address your question. One is reaching out to other cities and organizations in the state that have adopted gas-powered leaf blowers bans and done analysis on them. So there's different types of restrictions, but at least 100 cities in California have some sort of leaf blower restrictions. So there's a lot of options to look at for folks on what they've seen there. And, some of those are more recent. Some of them have been around for a while. And the other side of that is we are looking at sort of the commercial side of it and trying to understand that perspective better. So that's part of this outreach to landscapers, understanding folks who are potentially using electric already and how that is going. But we've also been reaching out to retailers. So we met with Ace Hardware earlier this summer and talked to them about kind of the offerings that they have and the work that they do to sell electric equipment. One note that I'll make is that you can't sell gas-powered landscaping equipment in the state anymore, so whatever you buy has to be electric. So there are definitely a variety of options out there, and the market is changing, but we're doing our research to kind of gather that information, and we'll definitely provide it in the report that we bring back on the potential ban.
One of the things to keep in mind, and I know that this is not the agendized item, but it's a big item for people, is that with the change in the labor market, I think there are fewer landscapers, and efficiency of the work they have to do is going to be pretty paramount to them. Otherwise, they're going to have to charge all of their customers more for the same work. So, just a thought. Thank you.
Councilmember DeVinny.
No, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and the work you're doing in this area.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I echo those comments. Thank you. And again, thanks to you and the team for the involvement in the discussion last week with the residents for all of all of the climate change and the environmentally friendly aspects of the Heather Farm Community Center.
I too echo the compliments and would just know we got some public comment about kind of the status of our fleet and EV chargers, and perhaps in some future updates we can get more statistical information on, are we on track? Are we meeting the metrics and the milestones
Yes.
that we had set?
Yeah, the reason I didn't touch on that topic much at all is because we're coming back to you, I think it's scheduled next month, with a whole topic just on our EV fleet and chargers. So we'll be able to get in a lot of detail there.
There you go. And on the leaf blower ban, is that a typical, goes into effect 30 days after the ordinance is adopted?
Yeah, it's a typical municipal code update process.
And I imagine there'll be some sort of public education component for a period of time before any heavier enforcement of that?
Yes, we have options on how we structure that. So staff will make a recommendation, but there'll be flexibility.
Okay, and I'm violating my own rule on one question. On what challenges do you see in terms of, at the federal level, some of these incentives going away with solar and kind of the carpool stickers and things like that?
Yeah, it's definitely a changing environment this year. So for folks who aren't aware, there are several federal incentives from the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that are expiring either at the end of September, so very shortly, or some of them are expiring at the end of the year. They'll likely make, the cost of buying an electric vehicle or doing some of these updates to your home, they'll make it more expensive. So we have been trying to get the word out about them now so that people try and take advantage of it at the time that we have now. But it'll be one less tool that we have in our toolbox next year, and we're just going to have to rely on other opportunities.
Okay, thanks, Candace.
Thank you. And I'll pass it back over to Erica to talk about the general plan update.
I am still Erica Van den Brand, the Community Development Director. The general plan basically is, and the update that we'll be doing to it is pretty much looking at the long-term vision for the next 25 years and putting together the pieces of the puzzle in order to help get us there. And you will all have a much greater time, et cetera, to take a deeper dive about the general plan at a special study session on October 7th. So I won't belabor the point. But as we get ready to do the RFP for consultant assistance, what we have been doing is we have been out in the community reaching out to them and asking them questions about what makes Walnut Creek special, what makes Walnut Creek great. And the information we've gotten back is that people love the walkable downtown, restaurants, shopping, sense of community, and safety as a community. And the graphic that's over there is basically a timeline of the city that we use as the backdrop as we're having these conversations with the public, as we did with the Locust Street Festival. And for those that didn't have an opportunity to see that, we are going to be at the Trunk or Treat event, and it will be a hauntingly magical endeavor. So with that, just wanted to also let you know that Councilmember Francois stole my thunder about the reaching out to the business community in his report out, so I don't need to go over that again. But we have been reaching out not only to our constituents to find out what kinds of things are of interest to them, but also to the business community, and then certainly staff here within the city to be able to have a better understanding of what's needed to be able to have success from each and every department within the city in helping develop the general plan, and so as we issue the request for proposal. So with that, there's more to come on October 7th, but I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Any questions on the general plan?
It's exciting. I was here during part of the last one, the very end. I appreciate that you've reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, the Locust Street Festival, Walnut Creek Downtown. have you thought, or could you put into your bag of tricks to actually reach out to the Historical Society and convene some of their members? They are a vast resource of the information on the past, and I think that perspective might be very helpful.
We're certainly going to be very inclusive, and that is, one of the elements of that we're, attempting to capture with the RFP, the request for proposal for the consultants, to be able to gather, the past information as well as all the demographics and so forth as we look toward the future.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions on the general plan? Okay, thanks, Erica.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Rich Payne. I'm a Public Works Director for the City of Walnut Creek, and I'm here tonight to present to you on the parks. Let me see here. There's a little bit of a delay. The parks and recreation facilities. There's a lot going on right now. All you have to do is just drive in Heather Farm Park and really around town. There's a ton of work, and so I'm here to present, just update you on some of the work that's happening. And I just wanted to remind you that this work is, a lot of this work is funded by the Measure O that we discussed tonight, and then along with our capital budget. And also we have some grant funding associated with these projects as well. So I'm going to be covering, there's a little bit of a delay here, sorry about that. You have to be patient. Okay. I will be covering 4 objectives that were set by your council. And the first one is the park and facility improvements we were working on. I'll give an update on the aquatics and community center. We'll talk about some of the pedestrian-friendly development that's happening in our community. And then I'll end with sort of an update on what we're doing, our plans, our future plans for the Clark pool site. So, as I said, there's a lot happening out in our parks in terms of our facilities. The ball field lighting project at Tice has been completed. If you've been out there in the evening, it's kind of a cool project. The lights are LED and they're very directional, so we don't have a lot of spillover, and I think that that's a nice touch to that park. It doesn't create light or the light pollution that normally comes off of large fields like that. Our synthetic turf project is on its way. If you've been out there, like I said, there's a construction zone out there everywhere you look. Ball fields 1 and 2 are obviously receiving the treatment, and along with the field to the north. So, the sub base is in place, and I know that the turf is on site and is going in as we speak. So that one is moving forward. The next one on the list here is the court resurfacing at Arbolado and Rudgear Park. If you've been at either one of these facilities, you'll know that in the past they're looking pretty rough, and the resurfacing, as you can see in the picture, looks fantastic and very inviting for the public. And I was out at Rudgear the other day and saw a pickup game happening, so it was really cool to see that. I think in the past it's been an underutilized space, and with the improvements, it's really drawing people to that site. And then I know Mike Vickers has been busy, and team have been out doing pop-ups and reaching out to the public to talk about the amenities that are projected to go into Civic Park and Walden. And we've been getting a lot of feedback. In fact, I think over 600 folks have given feedback on these 2 projects, on these playgrounds. And so we're going to be taking that information, the feedback that we got from the public, back to pros and present that to them and get some direction in terms of options. So that's what's happening there. And then I'm happy to report that phase 1 is moving along. As you all know, we've got our permits in place and the project has started, and many of you took a tour out on site. And it's an impressive project to look and see at the progress that's being made, specifically at the expansion of the lake. That whole area along the pathway looks totally different. And then, and so there's still a little bit of work to do there. We've got to do the planting on the bank and finish that element of the work, along with some trees and some other things along that bank. And then the focus now is turned to the cement pond and really constructing that new edge line of the pond in preparation for phase 2. And phase 2, I'm pleased to say that it went out for solicitation for bid last Friday. And so we're eagerly waiting for those bids to come back. As our city manager mentioned, we should be getting those back on October 23rd and then bring it back to council on November 18th. And I just want to acknowledge staff, not only Public Works. There's a lot of work that went into bringing this to this point. We had 3 plan checks, a lot of work from our architect, our Griffin, and Nolan Tam put a lot of work into it, along with our engineer staff and our building department. And I just want to say publicly, thank you for getting us to this point. There's a huge milestone. A lot of work went in and a lot of dedication from staff to make this happen, and given the deadlines that we've been given, as you heard earlier tonight. So it's been a real tight schedule, and I will say city staff rose to the challenge, and it was really great to watch. Nope. I hit it too many times, sorry. And as I mentioned, Clark Pool will be looking, I think I skipped one, I apologize. Okay, and then along with all the projects that are happening in our facilities, out on the streets, we've been working, doing a lot of work, specifically from our traffic maintenance, or traffic engineering. I will say a lot of these projects were grant funded. And just go down the list here, crosswalk safety improvements in a lot of the areas, specifically in the Larkey area. We've been getting a lot of feedback from that neighborhood, so there's a lot of work happening in there. The expanded sidewalks on Parkside, just filling in some of those gaps for our pedestrians along Walker and Jones, and then all along the Walnut Boulevard, in front of the Walnut Heights School right there, just filling some of those sidewalk gaps and making it safe for pedestrians. Our trail crossings, a lot of enhancements with, beacons and just really defining some of our crosswalks better so that more visible, making it more safe for our pedestrians to cross those wider streets. And then along with that, a lot of these projects are in design, including this one, the high quality bike facilities. This is a raised bike facility in some of the designated locations. And that work is in design. It probably won't happen until next year. So, and then taking us back to Heather Farm, we'll be looking at reimagining this site later in the fall or winter of 2026. In the meantime, we've done some study on the sound, the existing sound, so that we can use that as a baseline as we get closer to, looking at that site and how sound will be impacted by whatever improvement that we make moving forward. So. With that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Mayor Pro Tem, any questions on park facilities?
No questions. I just want to make a comment that when Rich says the cement pond like Beverly Hillbillies, it makes me smile.
I was trying to place that reference. Thank you for doing that for me. Councilmember Davidi, any questions on parks?
No, thank you for the update. I know got a busy department with all the projects going on, but appreciate your work.
Councilmember Silva.
Thank you for the update, and thank you to your entire team and all of the city staff and the contractors that have been working on all of this. I appreciate the Nutshell has been doing updates on where we're expending the Measure O funds, but it would be really important to not only have construction signage up, but like out at Tice Valley, the change occurs, people will forget that there was a change. Perhaps we can do, we have a sign shop.
Yes.
Maybe they can do some signage that says, you know, before and after or something like that, just to keep front and center that the voters came together with us to do all of this. It wasn't just about a pool and a community center. It's about a lot of different projects in the city. Just a thought.
Absolutely. It's great feedback. Thank you.
Councilmember DeVinny.
Do we have signs up that are saying like paid for with Measure O dollar? Are those being posted around?
Yes, those signs are on site,
Yeah.
but I think it's a good touch to look at maybe
Even getting them out
promoting
on
it
the
a little bit
street
more.
type
Right.
thing. I know the county's done that with a few of the things they've passed where they'll actually like have it right on the street when you're driving by.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Thank you.
I like that.
I think that was a concurrence from Mayor Pro Tem. And just in terms of logistical challenges, I guess with the turf fields and the soccer club, how's that working out?
So at Tice, we've obviously have a little more flexibility, and I know we've been programming that obviously into the evening. So that's I think that's really helped out. Obviously, that'll improve as we get Heather Farm on board. So.
And that's happening this fall, is the?
Yeah, the goal is to finish that by December, have it complete. So.
I was just going to add, Councilmember Francois, you know, staff's been communicating regularly with the Walnut Creek Soccer Club in terms of usage and timing, so they were able to adjust their schedules accordingly. And just based on some feedback I've received from there, they're really pleased with the project and obviously really excited to get out there and play on the turf, hopefully in October.
That's great.
We are too.
I haven't heard from him, so I was assuming that was the case. And then
That's good.
and then looking ahead, logistical challenges with the pool, community center footprint. There'll be some fencing going up at some point, and it'll be near the All Abilities playground, but won't necessarily. It might impact some of the picnic facilities, I understand, but not necessarily the playground.
That's correct. There's some shade structures that are currently in the turf area adjacent to the All Abilities playground, but the All Abilities playground will remain open and accessible.
Excellent. Thanks, Rich.
Yep. You're welcome. And I'll turn the time over to Captain Hibbs.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening, City Council, City staff, members of the public. Ryan Hibbs, Administrative Services Captain, Police Department. I'm here to give an update on, I'll wait a few seconds now. There we go. Public safety and social wellness. So within public safety and social wellness, there are 5 strategic goals listed here. One is to build an effective and innovative police department, maintain proactive police responses to crime trends, joint agency responses to homelessness and mental health challenges, crime prevention partnerships and programs in neighborhoods, the downtown and other commercial areas, and improvements to traffic transit, pedestrian and bike safety, and community and regional disaster preparation and resiliency to meet the increasing challenges of wildfires, earthquakes, droughts, floods, and other hazards. So we'll start with maintain an effective and innovative police department. And the first bullet point might give some folks some pause here. So AI for report writing is something we are currently exploring in order to take some of the labor intensity out of our report writing. So I'd like to assure members of the council and the public and city staff that this is all closed source. So the information is taken from body cam footage, and it's taken from our report management system and our computer-aided dispatch system to generate a police report based on the information it receives out of those 3 sources. And what happens is the author is the officer that has to then go in and they essentially edit. But there's an attestation at the end of it that includes essentially a disclaimer that says that the report was generated by the use of AI. This is a process that has been vetted through the district attorney's office. Other agencies within the county are using AI for report writing. They're reporting up to about 50% reduction in time spent for report writing, but we're not seeing that so far in our trials. We are seeing significant decreases, but we're not seeing 50%. Our social media engagement, I'm happy to report, is up, and this is actually a little bit of a low number. It's up 20%. Some of the metrics that we use to determine social media engagement include video views, and we did recently have a video that went viral based on a crime tip that we put out. The other major technology investment that we made was upgrading or expanded our automated license plate reader cameras, which speak to some of our other software a lot more efficiently, and they give us essentially better, more actionable data, and it comes in much faster. So it's made our decision making in terms of where we're allocating resources to combat crime and regional crime trends that much better. Strategic goal number 2 is continue proactive police response to crime trends. And so I'd like to highlight some of the work of our crime prevention specialist who essentially took that program from the ground up and built it, and she's taken it and running with it. Her name is Kira Rahman, and she is, at the moment, reigniting both the Neighborhood Watch program and building a crime-free business watch program. So the crime for these tend to go hand in hand. Obviously, the crime-free business is more commercialized, but essentially what they both do is they provide training to recipients. So whether it's a resident or it's a business owner or a manager, they receive training from us, and then they receive the crime-free business model is a certification. So they'll receive a certification that basically shows that they are participants in the program and that they've received the training. And based on there is actually a crime-free business national website. Based on their reporting, robberies reduced for businesses that participate in the crime-free businesses. The crime-free business program, robberies reduce about 40%, 40 to 45%, and then assaults to employees typically are reduced by 30%. And that we hope to have that program up and running late October, early November. We're about ready to launch that. And then we talked a little bit about evidence-based policing. We're very data-driven at the police department in order to best allocate our resources to crime and crime trends and issues. We want the best data available. So we take that data, we analyze it, we essentially devote resources specifically when we've had a reduction in staffing or we've had to reduce overtime hours. We've been able to stay on top of that. Strategic goal number 3 is joint agency response to homelessness and mental health challenges. We did recently work with community development and public works and the city attorney's office to update the homeless encampment protocol. Part of that approach is, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but part of that approach is also disaster response to the unhoused. We recognize that they are very vulnerable in natural disasters, and so we wanted to make sure that we incorporated we made a policy to make sure that we kept them safe. The emphasis with the homeless encampment protocol is to protect environment and public spaces and then offer resources to the unhoused population. Our approach here is compassion. So our homeless outreach program officers work in conjunction with CORE to offer the unhoused resources, help to get them off the street, but we also want to make sure that we address public safety and quality of life issues without criminalizing the homeless. And then CORE is available. See, I jumped the gun there. CORE is available weekdays 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and they're on call weekends and evenings. Strategic goal number 4 is to develop crime prevention partnerships and programs. We did talk about Neighborhood Watch earlier. That is essentially a refresh of that program. The fraud prevention program, we've reached out to a number of community groups, including the Golden Rain Foundation of Rossmore. We do conduct fairly quarterly updates on fraud issues, basically. So we present to the community there to make sure that some of our most vulnerable members of the community aren't victims of fraud. National Night Out, well attended this year. That's going to continue. And then I have a shameless plug here for under community outreach. We do have Coffee with a Cop coming up on October 1st from 9:30 to 11:30 at Tellus Coffee on Main Street. Everybody's favorite, traffic, transit, pedestrian, and bike safety. We'll get to e-bikes in just a minute, but we did host recently a bicycle rodeo at Civic Park that allowed parents, kids, and members of the community to come out and ride an obstacle course. They did get some education on e-bikes. We are actively working on an e-bike education campaign to go out citywide. That will be included in our social media as well. We recognize that e-bikes have flooded some areas of the region, and we're mindful of the dangers they can cause if people aren't riding them properly. So I know Councilmember Davini has spoken a number of times about his experiences in the ER, and we want to avoid that if we can. One thing we did start recently was high visibility traffic enforcement. This is an overtime assignment that is dedicated strictly to traffic enforcement and education. And so officers are deployed out to, on an overtime basis, are deployed out to hotspots in Walnut Creek. So higher traffic areas, high complaint areas, and high collision areas. On that note, in kind of, I don't necessarily know that I would point exactly to that effort, but it's definitely a big part of it. Our traffic stops and our citation issued are both up approximately 45% as a result of our traffic enforcement efforts. And then regional traffic saturations and DUI checkpoints, we've been lucky enough to collaborate with a number of agencies in the region to conduct traffic saturation details along with DUI checkpoints, and more are forthcoming there. This is to highlight some of the work that we've done with other agencies. In June, we conducted speed saturation, both June and July, we conducted speed saturation, the first with San Ramon, the San Ramon Police Department. These are typically operations that run about 2.5 to 3 hours, and within that time frame, our officers in conjunction with San Ramon police officers made 31 traffic stops and issued 24 citations. And then in July, we collaborated with Concord Police and made 66 stops and issued 54 citations in that time frame. And then back to e-bikes. So in August, we conducted essentially an e-bike sting, in which we basically focused on the downtown corridor. Out of that time frame, we made, this was about a 2-hour operation. Out of that, we made 9 stops and issued 1 citation for an unlicensed driver, and then we actually towed an electric motorcycle. Continuing on with improving traffic, transit, pedestrian, and bike safety, the police department is part of a traffic safety working group, which includes traffic engineering and traffic commissioners. We meet quarterly, and the topics generally go to engineering concerns, traffic concerns, education and enforcement will come up as a part of that. But one of the nice things is that this is a multi-pronged approach. We are not enforcement is one arm of that, but we want to take an education approach to changing driver behavior. That's our goal. Strategic goal number 6, enhance community and regional disaster preparation and resiliency. So the big priority here is for us to refresh CERT. We are seeing some challenges with filling the manager position for CERT, being that it is a volunteer position. It is a bit of a heavy lift. It does require a level of passion that we need to find the right person to fill that job. So, but one thing we've also done with the city is we have an emergency operations center training for city staff. These are hosted with put together in conjunction with an outside consultant that is an expert on emergency operations. These trainings are quarterly, and they include a number of different things like tabletop exercises, scenarios, role definition, and best practices. And the idea is that we don't, when we come into an emergency operations center, we all know what our role is, and we all kind of, that muscle memory kicks in, and we're able to kind of take on the role instead of essentially guessing. And then as part of the, I spoke about it earlier, but as part of the disaster response, we're very mindful that the unhoused is very vulnerable in these types of things, and so we want to be prepared to assist them as well. With that, we'll open it up for any questions any of you may have.
Okay, thank you, Captain Hibbs. Any questions on public safety?
I just have one question. I haven't heard anything, which is always a good sign, but what's the latest with crime downtown or any kind of downtown activity that we would like to avoid? Has there been any problems, especially on weekend nights?
Also haven't heard anything, and overall our crime is down 4%.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much for the report and for all the work that the department does. I think my colleagues would agree with me that what we hear about is crime, neighborhood, speeding, and e-bikes now.
Certainly.
Is it possible, if you have the time in the fall at some point, to get a little more detail on the neighborhood watch and the business crime-free program, maybe traffic enforcement, to get a little more so that we have a little more in our memory to be able to respond to those inquiries that we get?
Absolutely. We'll be providing an update in the near future.
That would be great.
Okay, thanks again. And
Certainly.
Joe, you gonna wrap it up?
Yeah, with that, I'll turn it back over to Joe Carrozza.
All right, well, very quickly, thank you to all of our leads for sharing the milestones that we have to date. We will be coming back to council in January with our next update. And with that, that's the close of our presentation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to open it up for public comment. Thank you for being patient and waiting. Members of the public have up to 2 minutes to address the council on our priorities updates. And feel free to fill out a card now or later. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, my goodness. It's so nice to be here with everybody. I have the names with the faces straight instead of just reading it and getting confused. I had some points here, and I got most of those answered and learned a lot more. Just a crazy thing came to me today. I was at Safeway, drove in, and just like a bumper sticker on the front of this big car that says, new driver in training, be patient or something. And I remember when there was something on the top or something was large, and so I don't hardly ever see anyone or know who's learning how to drive anymore. My question has to do with bicycles and where we park them. I know that there's some places you can lock them up and reserve it, like the BART, and there's a few places. I don't know why we have a crazy one over at Del Monte by the Kaiser. They have, I think, it's room for 2. I've never seen anybody use it. And I know sometimes they get broken into, like at BART or something. And so I saw something, now I can't find it, of course, having to do with what's coming in terms of bicycles and storage and all of that. And so how do we, you either think of those containers or you lock it up around a pole or something like we have a lot of. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with next. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for being here tonight, Jan. And you're right, we do have everyone here tonight. So there's a wealth of information, a lot of resources that went into this, and we're very appreciative of that. I think what you're referring to maybe is the curb management plan that we had a study session on last meeting, which should have further details on bike parking and where you can park your bike, what types of facilities, and what improvements we're going to try to do in that regard. So bringing it on home, want to start with Councilmember Davini? Any thoughts, comments, direction to staff, attaboys and attagirls, the floor is yours.
No, thank you. Presentations were very thorough. I appreciate all the work that went into them and the work you're doing to improve the city. And I don't have any questions for now.
Excellent. Councilmember Silva.
Thank you for all the work. You make it an honor to be able to serve this community because you serve it so well. So thank you.
That was very poignant. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Made most of my comments, but again, thanks to staff. This is terrific to get these kind of updates and just seeing the improvements everywhere, including with the cement pond. I love it.
I'm going to have that song in my head for the rest of the night now. I too would like to thank staff. The presentation was extremely well done. I like the focus on the strategic objectives. You take a lot of information and put it into very digestible format. I'm particularly excited about, the second floor opening up again. I think that will be a real big improvement. There's things that get lost through email that you can't do, that you can only do person to person. And I think it's a lot more efficient to do it that way. And I think it'll be very well received. So I'm excited to see us doing that. And then at some point, maybe not now, but when the general plan consultant is on board, to the extent there are opportunities to have flyers with QR codes or something we can put at the farmer's market, that's another touch point and an area where we can engage with the public on that effort. So if there aren't any other comments, then we'll go ahead and close that item and thank staff. And we're almost done, but I would like we're going to adjourn tonight in memory of Patty Court. Patty was a cherished member of our city team for 24 years, and throughout her career with the city, she made lasting contributions to both our art and recreation programs. I know she touched the lives of countless colleagues, artists, and students with her warmth, her dedication, and her unwavering support. Patty's dedication and spirit will be remembered with gratitude and affection by all who had the privilege to work alongside her. And let us honor her memory and the profound difference she made in our community. Thank you all for being here tonight. Good night.